money for real estate development, or project of one kind or another. It could be rehabbing houses and reselling them. So you can get on, you can be a lender through your IRA, and that's a secured loan. So if the real estate market is steady, isn't declining, and you're getting a 50% loan to value, then you've got some cushion there. And if you're loaning money and there's a default on the loan, then you end up with a property, which could be worth considerably more than the loan. So that's a very popular. That's a good feature. It's a really good feature. Yeah, you can actually get these things online. There's a lot of note activity online on the internet. REITs are real estate investment trusts. They're just large real estate projects. They get a lot of investors, and they're pretty conservative. So they tend to be based on some income and some appreciation. But again, it's somewhat secured by the property itself. Mortgage funds are basically a pool of these trust deeds, which are again loans on real estate. And then there's the tax liens, which I mentioned earlier, which is a popular investment. So all of these can be done very easily through your self-directed account. Okay, now comes the discussion about prohibited transactions. And one of the things that happens with real estate is that people want to, one of their children is going away to college, and they want to buy them a house so that they and their friends can live in it or something. Or you want to put a parent up in a house or something like that. These are examples of prohibited transactions. The whole prohibited transaction issue is that you cannot have transactions between the IRA and a disqualified person or entity. And the IRS defines a disqualified party as parents, children, spouses, and any entity in which any of those disqualified people have a majority interest. So you can't do favors for these disqualified people, basically. You can't loan money to your spouse from your IRA or to your children or to your parents, yes.
But a brother or sister?
Brother or sister, for some reason the IRS says, you know, I don't know why that is, but they're perfectly okay. They're not disqualified. Right. But I would love to hear the argument why that would be the case. You know, but it's kind of nice that they have that out, because there's sometimes you want to do something for a brother or sister or have them involved in some way, and it's not an issue. Like, we don't recommend that you manage a property if the property is held in the IRA, because that would be a transaction of sorts between you and your IRA. You're managing property for which you can't get paid, because that would certainly be a prohibited transaction. And if you do it for free, then the IRA is getting a benefit, and that sort of constitutes a perceived benefit. You can't do repair work on the property that your IRA owns.
Can you get paid commission on it?
Can you receive commission?
Yeah.
No.
They'll pay back in.
Yeah. Or you give commission to somebody else, and then they can give it to you. Right. I'm not looking.
But you can't.
An LLC.
Yes, that's true.
So then a brother or sister under an LLC is qualified.
Yeah, and that's another benefit of the IRA LLC, is that you can actually manage the property because you're managing the LLC.
Right. Right. And of course, you could hire somebody to do the repair.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I always probably should be careful what I'm saying this on the internet, but the IRS has these regulations that they can't possibly know whether. Do you think they have, they have people hiding behind bushes to see if they're doing any work on the property? So the only way that would come up is if, and that's why we try to avoid at all costs writing a check to the IRA holder for expenses incurred on a real estate account, because that's documented. That's documented and approved. So we always try to. That's a perfect place for the brothers, sisters, somebody that would have to get involved.
Needs to be written to the trust company. the custodian or...
Well, the custodian, we're writing the check to
Right.
pay some sort of expense for something else,
Right.
whether it's property management or repair and maintenance, whatever.
Right.
We'd rather not write it to the IRA holder.
Right.
Because that looks like a distribution, which could be
Gotcha.
taxed
Yeah.
before you want it to be. Okay, yes, sir.
If you wanted to buy a house and put into your IRA, you could just do 10% down, or
No,
it has to be 50.
Yeah, it depends on the property, but it's probably going to be 35 at the least and probably 50% at the high end. So it's not a highly leveraged transaction, but again, it gives you some room to get two properties instead of one, or maybe three instead of one, instead of paying cash for it. But, and again, it's one of those situations where you want to have a little reserve in case it's vacant. Because all the loan payments have to be paid out of the IRA.
Okay, so if you're paying cash, it's not a big issue. If you're making a
Right.
loan, then you have to have the loan checks go to through the IRA back to the mortgage company, or
Yes.
okay,
Actually, the lender, the bank, will give us a coupon book, and every
Gotcha.
month we send the
Okay.
loan payment in.
okay, good.
And hopefully it's less than the rent. But I mean, that's one of the things I've heard from, I'm an affiliate member of the San Jose Real Estate Investors Association.
Okay.
I just did a little thing for them recently. What was I going with that? Oh, well.
The rent being less than the mortgage payment.
Yeah. They just have to build up a little reserve so that they're in a position to where, you know, you can get through the
Yes,
slow
you're saying
times.
any negative has to come out of the IRA. That's basically what you're
Any
saying.
expense have to come out of the IRA.
Anything,
Yeah,
expenses like fix up or,
Right.
carpet or management fee or utilities.
Exactly.
Even if it is, even if it is vacant, and paid off free and clear, you still have to pay the utility bill out of the IRA.
That's right.
Okay.
Exactly.
And once
What I was saying, what I was going to say about San Jose Real Estate, they found some properties in other states, and they found that there's a much better cash flow because you're paying less than you would say in California for a rental property, but the rents are pretty good.
Yeah.
So they're getting pretty good return with cash flow, plus hopefully some appreciation in the long term. So.
and then the only way to bail out if you got into trouble is your once a year contribution.
Right, makes a contribution. Yeah, exactly.
$5,000 to $6,000.
Yeah.
And that contribution can be made anytime during the year. It just has to be under that dollar amount.
Right. Well.
Multiple contributions, as long as it's less than 5,000 or 6,000,
Yeah.
whatever it is.
We have people make contributions to make their property tax payments once a year.
Yeah.
In fact,
Can you have more than one IRA?
sure.
You said,
Okay. And you have a Roth and a traditional?
there's so many Roth IRAs as well.
Yeah. I have a
What
guy
can you
that,
put in there? What kind of assets can you put in? What are like the different kind of assets you can put in IRA?
all of those things that I listed earlier.
Okay.
It could be precious metals, it can be real estate, it could be promissory notes, it can be hedge fund, it can be any of those kinds of things. It can also be stocks and mutual funds. We hold stocks and mutual funds also, just that we're not a broker.
From looking at some of the precious metals like gold, it seemed like there had to be some particular type of gold.
Yes,
That goes
that's
in
true.
there.
Yes, you can buy gold, silver, palladium, and platinum. Those are the four metals that you can buy in an IRA. And they have to be a certain degree of fineness. And you can buy bullion bars or bullion coins. And it's very, very expensive. And if they're held in an IRA, they have to be stored at a depository where they keep very close watch on them.
Not under your mattress.
Actually, a lot of people that invest in IRA LLCs are using those to buy precious metals.
Okay.
Okay? So prohibited transactions, bad.
Yeah.
That's a message here. And we run into it all too often. And the closing remark is, I hate to end on a downer here, but the penalty for participating in a prohibited transaction is full distribution of the IRA, which means the tax, which you're going to end up paying sooner than you know, and there could be penalties if you commit this prohibited transaction before age 59 and a half. So you pay a 10% penalty on top of the tax.
When you say distribution, it's got to go back to you, plus all the taxes have to be paid.
Right.
Okay. It's not like it's going to go. Okay.
Personally, yeah. Right, exactly.
Okay.
And we've had people call and say, you know, I took money out, I borrowed money from my IRA, and my accountant told me, you know, that's a prohibited transaction, so we distributed the thing to them. And we wouldn't know about a lot of these things unless they told us. Sometimes we do, but not always.
If you end up having to do a full distribution through the IRS, is there something like a credit score where they say you can't come back in and do it for another year or two?
I don't believe there is.
So you can just come right back and...
Yeah,
okay.
if you have the money to do it.
They just want your they want their taxes on the money for your mistake.
I'll tell you what some people do is if they're in an investment, and maybe like an IRA LLC might be a good example, and yet they have other assets they want to put in an IRA, they'll actually open up separate accounts, where the one that there may be some concern about will keep an account by itself so that the other accounts and the assets can be affected. Because we distribute everything in that account, but we don't go to other accounts under the same social security number and report those or distribute those.
Okay, good.
Yes, sir.
So would we pay you to ensure that, you know, I mean, we're busy with our businesses, so we want to focus on that. Would we pay you, of course, if we could afford it, to make sure that doesn't happen?
We're very cheap. No, this whole idea of self-directed,